We're all in uncharted territory looking for ways to support our communities. At Dell Technologies, we're making sure small businesses have the right tech solutions. Dell Technologies advisors are here for you, from helping small businesses stay connected and productive while working remotely with Windows 10 and Microsoft Teams, to rapidly deploying remote work solutions that limit upfront costs with Dell Financial Services. We're standing by you every step of the way. Call 877-ASK-DELL. That's 877-ASK-DELL.
The Best of Golic and Wingo podcast is presented by Capital One. This is Banking Reimagined. Boogie with you. Golic and Wingo with you. ESPN Radio, ESPN2, presented by Progressive Insurance. Hope your Monday's off to a good start. Mike Golic Jr., Trey Wingo here with you. And that's the sense, whether it's perceived or real, it feels like we're beginning to see some things beginning to return, and it's just give us a little taste of something, right?
Well, I mean, listen, we're looking at 35 states looking to some
ease
have
restrictions,
ease the restriction, and start to open up. We had 53,000 more positive tests this weekend, so people are going to get antsy and people are going to get out a little bit more, and places are starting to open up. And listen, sports is no different. Athletes are getting antsy. Athletes want to get back out and do what they do, and they're going to see states open up, and everybody's going to. I think it's kind of human nature, right, Mike? You kind of rush to it. You see, well, it's nice out. Everybody's going out. Everything looks fine. And you kind of want to rush it back, and then sometimes the numbers will hit you right in the face of positive tests, of deaths, of hospital stays, and you're like, man, we need to be patient. But I think for some people, it's getting harder and harder.
Well, so this is what we've heard from the beginning from a lot on the side of sports, which is this decision's not going to be made by us of when we come back.
Correct.
It's going to largely be made by the state governors, and in a lot of instances, they also say science, although there's some debate on how much science is making the decisions that are currently going on right now versus the state government certainly seeing pressure from its constituents. And so regardless, for sports in that portion of it, once they've seen these things relax and certain states create room for these things to be possible, I think sports have kind of always said that was going to be the benchmark, and now they're capitalizing.
Right. We have, an MMA fight coming up this weekend?
This weekend, yep.
And then we have NASCAR, and it's basically saying they're 7-Eleven. They're always open.
They are May 17th to May 27th. 7 races in those 11 days in Darlington and Charlotte with all 3 of the series. So, yeah, it's a lot of questions.
Yeah.
Be good if we had a driver to ask some questions, too.
And ladies and gentlemen, we have that. It's like you read the rundown. Well done on your part. We're delighted to be joined now by Joey Logano, NASCAR driver and 2018 NASCAR Cup Series champ. Joey, good morning. Hope you and yours are safe. Thanks for being with us. What was your reaction when you got the news that NASCAR is going to be revving things up again, literally and figuratively, with these 7 races in 11 days?
Well, first off, thanks for having me on. I hope you guys are doing well. We're hanging strong over here, and we're getting back to racing here pretty soon. And I've been fortunate enough to be on a lot of these phone calls with a lot of the leadership from our sport, and it's been pretty exciting and interesting conversations to be a part of them all and see where we're going with it. And I think some really good decisions were made. Yes, we're going to have to kind of change the way our normal weekend is at the racetrack, as far as practice and qualifying and how we get in there. But I will say that NASCAR has done a good job internally with some of the experts and doctors there, but also externally talking to, plenty of other doctors and experts and, trying to figure out how do we go back the safest way possible. And how do we, use the whole facility to help with social distancing. It's going to be interesting as a driver. Pretty much what we were told is we go to the racetrack and go to our motorhomes, and we don't leave there until we get in our race car. And we're responsible for all our gear, and, so no one else touches that. So we just try to be as safe as possible. And honestly, I feel safer about going to the racetrack than I do going to the grocery store these days. So I'm excited to get back at the track. I know everyone in our industry is. We've been doing this iRacing thing, which has been good. But I tell you what, it's not like driving a real race car. So I'm ready to get back at it.
I'm sure you guys are, as we're talking to Joey Logano again, May 17th, 19th, and 20th at Darlington, 2 cup races, an Xfinity race, and then 4 races in Charlotte, 2 cups in Xfinity and a trucks race. So, again, in 11 days, we have 7 races. So, and Joey, so let's dive into it a little bit. For you, I get it. Listen, social distancing for car drivers seems pretty easy. Outside of the fact that you're driving a car real fast with a bunch of other cars, not so easy. But the social distancing thing, I get it. Your motorhome to the car, and that's cool. But we know racing teams are there, and we see pit crews out there. We see a lot of guys working on the car that are awfully close together. What has been talked about as far as the rest of the team and how their procedure is going to be?
Yes, that's a great question. So there's scheduled times to when the team will be able to get into the racetrack to try to keep them separated. From what I hear, they're going to separate the cars where they're parked around the whole racetrack. Typically there's hundreds of thousands of fans around the whole racetrack. Well, it's going to be no fans, so we have the whole facility. You think about a 1.5 mile racetrack, we have the whole area to separate. And obviously the masks, hand sanitizer, all that stuff is mandatory. And they will be armed with their hand sanitizer throughout it. And there won't need to be as much work done to these race cars at the racetrack. Without practice and qualifying, it's pretty much unload them, push the cars to attack, make sure the integrity of our sport is still intact and that our cars are have the equal playing field that we're so used to, and then you go race. So, everyone's just got to do the best they can from that standpoint. And especially, I think if you wear the mask and you're conscious of the situation, the best advice I heard is assume everybody has it. What would you do if you knew your neighbor right next to you had COVID-19? How would you act? And I think that's kind of the best advice you can give anyone at this point is what would you do? You would protect yourself. So that's kind of the approach we have to have.
Joey, I'm curious because this is obviously speaks to a larger issue that our country's had in this regard, but is there any sort of testing program or policy that's going to be in place as these races resume?
That I can't say that I know for sure on how all that is going to work. Some of that I think is still in the process of trying to figure out, but there would definitely be, from what I hear, obviously we'll be checking our temperatures and making sure there's no symptoms at the minimum. Any more than that, I can't say I know for sure. So, we'll like you said, we'll take our extra precautions everywhere we can. And I'm sure if there's any symptoms with anyone, I'm sure it'll be a pretty big, result that we'll see some things change pretty quickly.
Joey Logano with us, NASCAR driver who had 2 wins in the 4 races this season before it was suspended in Las Vegas and Phoenix. So I guess, Joey, just from a personal perspective, what would be the thing that you would be most comfortable with in terms of what do you want to see out of this that would make you feel like, okay, this is all fine and good and we're trending in the right direction? What do you want to see out of NASCAR in terms of the results of this, and also specifically in terms of the things that you would feel comfortable with knowing that the most precautions are being taken?
Well, I think, you look at the opportunity ahead of us, right? And you see a crisis like this, and as unfortunate as it is and hard as it is for everyone, you got to look at the opportunity that's just in front of us. And as you guys know, in the industry that you're in, there's a lot of eyeballs and ears listening and watching TV and radio, and there's no live sports. There's no competition at this point. So being first to the market is a huge advantage that we're going to try to take advantage of. So that's a huge moment for our sport to try to grow some new fans, give our existing fans what they want, and do it in the safest way. So when I think of what we can gain out of it, boy, it's hard to fathom what it can be. And then I think at the same time, boy, it's going to be kind of crazy for us because we've been, obviously sitting outside of a race car for over 2 months. And then we're going to barrel it down into turn 1 at 200 miles an hour with no practice and qualifying or anything. Hang on. So that's going to be a a puckered up moment, as we say over here. We'll be hanging on tight.
Yeah, it's going to be a little different than the iRacing, I would say, no doubt about that. As Joey Logano joins us, NASCAR driver, again, May 17th in Darlington, the Cup Series. They start and go to May 27th, 7 races in those 11 days. And you're right, Joey, so many people cannot wait for this to get going. That being said, do you think, or have you talked to any drivers who are hesitant and may not race because they're just not sure?
Nah, I mean, we've had a lot of calls. We've had a call between all the drivers last week, too, as well. There's a lot of questions asked, but I wouldn't say anyone concerned enough to say they're not going to go race. I think everyone feels confident that everything's going to be okay. I think it's just more procedural things of how the weekend's supposed to go, where we're supposed to be, race format, yada, 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 all that stuff. So there's a lot of questions, as there should be, and especially, about how we protect ourselves. But I would say by the end of the call, everyone felt pretty confident that they're going to be okay.
Joey, the other portion of this is there are going to be no fans. And for anyone that's ever been to a NASCAR race, is such a huge part of an experience is the event and the environment around that race. So how do you expect that to go for guys being in that environment where that's no longer a part of it?
Yeah, it's going to be interesting because I expect that, there's no fans at the racetrack, but I think it'll be the largest crowd we ever raced in front of. I think that's what it's going to happen, is that you're going to have such a huge impact from the TV standpoint, and everyone watching on May 17th. I think that's going to be amazing. Now, it's going to feel weird because we're not going to know that because there's going to be no one at the racetrack. So I could imagine, some of the victory lane celebrations and things like that are going to feel weird. You're going to, from what I hear, is you're going to do an interview from inside the car on your radio from inside the car. And then you're going to go to victory lane and nobody's going to be there. You're going to grab the trophy and go back to your motorhome and drive home. So it's just going to be, that's going to be the weirdest feeling, I think, before the race starts and it being so quiet. It's just going to have a weird feel. But at the same time, it's going to be the largest crowd possibly that we'll ever race in front of.
Well, Joey, I can tell you, having just been through the virtual draft, there will be eyeballs. I can promise you that. Hey, Joey, tell us what your foundation is doing with their donation of $1 million to aid in the COVID-19 relief efforts.
Yeah, we've done some amazing things, and that's kind of going back to the opportunity in a crisis like this. This is where it is for us, and taking the opportunity to try to impact our community and fight through COVID-19 together, united. And we teamed up with Elevation Church down here in Charlotte, North Carolina, and put together $1 million fund. And we've been impacting a lot of different areas, whether it's from educational to giving the PPE to our first responders, from the financial side, helping people with meals and just any area we can. We had so many great ideas to do, but then we also realized now is not the time to come up with great ideas. We need to put things into action because the moment is now where people need help. So teaming up with a lot of different organizations and trying to disperse this money in the most efficient way to help people has been the most rewarding stuff that we can do at this moment, and getting things going and life back on track. Because we talk about everyone being in the same boat in this situation, and we're really not. We're in the same sea, but we're all in different boats because we can weather the storm in different ways depending on your situation. So helping where we can is most important right now.
Well, that's well said. And well done on your part as well. Joey, we appreciate the time, and we look forward to, seeing sports on May 17th. Should be a lot of fun. Thanks for being with us this morning.
All right, can't wait. Thanks, guys. Have a good one.
All right, Joey. Win that first race, you're back on this show.
Exactly.
Talking about it. So really quick, they do have some of the rules that are out already. Spotters who are normally shoulder to shoulder on top of the press box or tower have to spread out. The motorhomes, if you've seen where they use it right next to one another, they're going to have to spread out. Teams are going to be limited to 16 total members, including the driver. Over-the-wall pit crew members will use face screens or neck socks in addition to their normal gear as well. To your point, Mike, of testing and such, there will be random temperature checks of everyone working in the garage area. As far as testing, they're not going to test crew members and drivers. Crew members and drivers will not receive virus tests because COVID-19 tests still aren't widely available to the public, and the sanctioning body is reluctant to take tests away from communities in need. So that's the reason they're not going to do that, but to do the temperature thing in the garage. So those are obviously these are and the main thing is spreading everybody out.
Right.
And that's what they're doing with the over-the-wall pit crew as well. So, man, you are right. Just like the draft where there's normally, 500,000 or more people there. But, okay, there were 55 million. There's going to be a lot of eyeballs in this. There's going to be a lot of people this weekend for the MMA.
Sure.
No doubt about it. And when that starts May 17th, we're watching Joey, win and then come on Golic and Wingo.
Absolutely.
It's going to be a lot of eyeballs watching.
It is just interesting doing it without a true testing policy because that's the one question we've asked of pretty much any league that's getting ready to start. It was one of the criticisms that a lot of people had of the WWE when they held their first event, even in a closed set, even in their training facility, of saying, well, they didn't do it without a testing policy.
So that's the question, I guess, and listen, we haven't been in this situation, is that the responsible thing to do to say we're not going to have tests because we don't want to take tests away from others, or would the responsible thing be, hey, let's wait until there's enough tests for everybody so we can do tests at the racetrack of the crew and the driver? I don't know the answer.
I think that would be the responsible thing, but there's, that's in an ideal world, and we know we don't live in one.
We don't live in that. Yeah.
We are definitely not in an ideal situation, so everybody has to make these decisions on what they're most comfortable with, and NASCAR feels comfortable going ahead. And listening to Joey, it sounds like the majority of the drivers feel comfortable with this part, and if they're good with it, I guess they're fine to live with the results, right?
They're quite honestly, though, let's be honest, they have the... Again, not the job, but of the social distancing, theirs is probably the easiest, right? Yeah. They have a motorhome. They all have motorhomes.
Right.
They're in it by themselves, and they go right to their car where they're social distance on the track. It's the rest of the team has the proximity issues.
Yeah, I think the easiest still remains golf. Like golf to me.
I meant in racing. I meant of everybody on Joey Logano's NASCAR racing team.
Yes.
He probably has it the easiest going from motorhome to car, right? Than his teammates do. I agree about golf without question.
Right, and they're coming back in June.
Yes.
It looks like. So we'll see what happens there. But again, it was great to get that from Joey talking about what he's doing from the Joey Logano Foundation. I thought that was a great line. We're all weathering in the same sea, but we're in different boats.
Yeah.
And which I thought was a really good way of putting it. And so he's doing what he can, and we're doing what we can to put the spotlight on those that might be in smaller boats in this sea, but are still doing what they can to help other people.
Yeah, it's a good reminder that all playing fields are not equal in all this, but that everyone can still do something to help, right? Like that's the one thing we've seen. So the last month or so, we've been doing hometown heroes around here, and we asked you listening, to show us examples of people in your area that were making a difference, no matter what their circumstances were. This idea that we can all find a way to help and give back. And we've been blown away by the results that we've seen at Golic and Wingo on Twitter, golicandwingo.com, our website. We've seen countless examples of people in a variety of different jobs and in a variety of different places across the country finding a way to help, putting their hand in the pile during this process and trying to help in the midst of this pandemic. And we were so overwhelmed by the results, we thought, all right, there's got to be something that we can do to say thank you outside of just doing what we wanted to do when we first set out to do this, which is, show it to a larger audience, to blast it out on all of our platforms that we're fortunate enough to have here and show it to the light of day. And so we looked and we said, all right, well, what else can we do? We know we normally do the Wingo Cup every year. We're not going to be able to do that this year for obvious reasons. And so we decided, all right, maybe we can redirect those funds. And we went to our partners at Ferguson. They were huge. They were so fast to get on board with that. And we really appreciate that. And so because of that, we were able to offer a small financial gift of $5,000 to some of our heroes. And we've been honoring those heroes, 20 of them over this last week and now this week, doing 2 a day up until the end of this week. And we're finding creative ways to say thank you to a lot of our different hometown heroes that we've gotten to know through this. But the cool part for us is always getting to actually reach out and call and talk to a lot of these heroes. And we got to talk to Barb last week, who we're getting ready to honor now. And Barb lives in Carrollton, Ohio, which is outside of Canton, a very rural area in there, and one that, like others were hit hard, especially for one of the most vulnerable populations, which is school children at schools that are already dependent on the meal programs, that qualify for the meal programs, that are a primary source of food for a lot of them. And what Barb did, along with her other cafeteria workers under her as a nutritional director for a school out there, essentially turning their school's cafeteria into a food bank that now helps serve about just under 20,000 meals a week.
I want Barb setting anything up because she has taken charge here with everything from not only the cooks where they're making, as Mike mentioned, under 20,000, 17,500 meals weekly.
Say that again.
17,500 meals weekly, her and 16 others in the cafeteria. But then she's also putting into play the bus drivers who have to deliver the food. They have half of the meals are delivered, so she sets all that up. The other half, they come by the school and pick it up. And what does she say? Like every Tuesday, she just crosses her fingers and hopes all the volunteers show up, to hand out the food. What she has running there for the kids who need it is absolutely incredible. And we had a chance to chat with Barb.
You guys essentially turned your cafeteria into almost a food pantry at the school.
Oh, right? It is. 2 days a week, my staff gathers and we get everything together so that on Tuesday when the people show up, we can just blast it out. We have this amazing collection of volunteers that come together with my cooks, and we, in a matter of 2 hours, put out about 1,300 meal packages. That's 1,300 breakfast, 1,300 lunch, times 7 days supply, so it's around 18,200.
Wow.
It's just incredible.
It's unbelievable what she's doing.
Yep. Remarkable stuff there from Barb and everyone else we've talked to. So in partnership with our friends at Ferguson, we just want to continue to celebrate and thank all of our hometown heroes, and we'll keep doing it all the rest of this week.
Yeah, it's been absolutely phenomenal. It's been great, and we certainly appreciate the efforts, and we'll continue to celebrate as many of those as we can at Golic and Wingo or on Twitter or golicandwingo.com. And you can just see the stories. They're absolutely remarkable. It's true resiliency and in the time of need where people are stepping up and doing what they can. It's absolutely phenomenal. Coming up next, why Michael Jordan took offense to being compared to one player that would actually end up in the Hall of Fame. Yeah. That's who he was, and we appreciate it. We'll get to that after.
Support for the Best of Golic and Wingo podcast comes from our friends at Rocket Mortgage by Quicken Loans. Home today is so much more than it was yesterday, but at Rocket Mortgage, home is still all about you. During these challenging times, the top priority at Rocket Mortgage is the health and safety of the communities they serve. If you need mortgage assistance, their team is available 24/7 to answer questions and offer solutions. Whether that means saving money on your mortgage or finding a new way to navigate payments. From their home to yours, the team at Rocket Mortgage is with you. Visit rocketmortgage.com/Golic to learn more. Call for cost information and conditions. Equal housing lender, licensed in all 50 states, NMLSconsumeraccess.org, number 3030.
Brought to you by Capital One. You know how it feels when you've saved enough for that long-awaited home edition? Now, imagine saving enough for an edition on that edition. That's the feeling with Capital One, where a new savings account earns 5 times the national average. Capital One is helping you earn more towards your savings goals. This is Banking Reimagined. What's in your wallet? Capital One N.A., member FDIC.
Have you noticed a theme, by the way, from all the music that we played today?
The great music?
Yeah, the great music. All have the word sunshine in it. After what we saw this weekend, intoxicating over the East Coast.
Man, the East Coast got some great weather. It was very nice. A lot of people out social distancing because there's a lot of room outside, but I think people were so happy to get outside.
I mean, we needed something to distract us from the murder hornets. I mean, what the hell is
what
going
is
on?
that all of a sudden?
Killer bees once, murder hornets now.
I mean, these things sound terrifying.
Well, they are.
Well, I was going to say, for anyone that missed that somehow, apparently these murder hornets have come over that have giant pincer-like heads used to bite off the heads and decapitate bees, and they have stingers that feel like getting a white-hot poker stuck into your skin.
So you're saying we should avoid the murder hornets?
I mean, what? Like 2020, what the hell?
What is going on?
I feel bad for bees.
Yeah, bees are going to get the brunt of this one.
Yo, high key, we need to guard bees. Because
for a lot of reasons.
Yeah.
They are.
Big shout out to bees. But also 2020's been so messed up, we just sort of tossed aside the fact that we had a confirmed UFO video released by the government.
Right? How crazy is that? This is we don't know what this is. Here you go. Way to put that in a news dump when we're thinking about something else.
But it shouldn't have been a news dump. We have plenty of time for all this stuff.
Yeah, we do.
Then again, it was time to get to the last dance, so you could push that aside.
Yeah, I mean, the thing I took away from last night's episode, and I guess you could have gone down the gambling thing and all that kind of stuff, but to me, it was just how confident Michael Jordan was in his ability that he was that damn better than anybody else, and the things he would use to motivate himself along those lines, right? One of the things I took away from, I felt bad for two players that were really, really good. Clyde Drexler, who's in the Hall of Fame,
right?
And Michael basically just said, wait, you're comparing him to me? No, that ticks me off. And he said, I'm going to give it to that dude. And he certainly did in game one of that NBA Finals against the Portland Trailblazers and Clyde Drexler. So for more on all of that, we're delighted to be joined by Jackie MacMullan, our ESPN senior NBA writer and commentator. Jackie, thanks for being with us this morning. To me, one of the takeaways from last night's episodes was basically that by any means necessary, Jordan would find that edge and would be relentless when he found that edge.
I know, it really is I think it's what separated him, honestly, from everybody else because of that mindset. And this goes all the way back to when he was a little kid playing pickup or, on the high school team. He didn't make varsity and held on to that song. He mentioned it in his Hall of Fame speech, right?
Yeah.
So, and poor Clyde Drexler, you're right, because Clyde is really a terrific player and was having an unbelievable year that year. And he's a pretty good, I don't know if you guys know Clyde, but pretty quiet, unassuming guy, not a braggart by any means. And I thought it was so funny when I was talking to Danny Ainge this week. He was on that Portland team talking about he knew they were in trouble because everybody was doing these great comparisons, as we media like to do. Oh, these two guys are on the same par. They're the two best players in the world. And Danny said, I knew we were in trouble because everything Michael said was so deferential. Oh, yes, yeah. Clyde is a wonderful player. And he said, I knew him well enough to know he was going to try to seek and destroy Clyde, which is exactly what he did in that first game.
It's amazing what great players do to get chips on their shoulder.
It's very Brady.
A lot of them are imagined, right? Some of them are real, but a lot of them are imagined. You just get yourself up into a lather.
And whatever works, right? You can imagine it all you want if it's going to work. How much imagining was there in just how bad the gambling situation was to where Jordan would shut off the media and really had a bad situation there for a while, and just how deep that gambling went?
It was a very hot topic. It was a legitimate topic at the time, I feel. There was a lot of smoke, and I thought Jordan's answers in this documentary were very interesting. And what he's saying is true. He didn't break any laws. He had a competitive problem. I loved that because that is exactly true. And but I think what happened was he was the darling for so long, and then finally there was a little bit of a smudge on those very squeaky clean Air Jordans. And the media assault was relentless. I was around for it. And that, and then the combination of when his father, of course, was very tragically murdered. He told me many years later, within minutes, people were connecting that to his gambling. And he never forgave the people. You talk about, slights, real or imagined. He never forgave the many people that wrote about that or even insinuated that. His father had just passed away, and I really think it drove him from the game.
Talking to Jackie MacMullan, our ESPN senior NBA writer. Jackie, let's take that idea of holding a grudge or managing to remember everything and apply it to the 92 Dream Team. Is there any world where you're believing that Michael Jordan didn't have some hand in Isiah Thomas not being a part of that team?
Oh, there's no question he had a hand in it, but there were many hands. That's the thing I think people have to remember. I thought the most important thing that Jordan said regarding that was when he talked about the camaraderie of the Dream Team and how well everybody got along, and Charles mentioned it also last night on our network with Scott Van Pelt. And I do think that it's a valid point to say that that dynamic would have been different if Isiah had been on that team, simply because he had so many axes to grind. And, he and Bird had issues. He and Magic, when Magic was HIV positive, he really felt that Isiah wasn't having his back during that time, which turned out, to have a lifelong relationship be damaged. There was a lot of bodies, and because there's no way on this earth that Isiah Thomas should have been left off that team for his ability. And everybody acknowledges that, including Michael. And Michael says, I hate him. And he does. He's not kidding.
Well, at least he's honest about it.
Right, that's it.
And the other thing, Jackie, I took away from this is just how much they wore out Tony Kukoc because of Jerry Krause. I mean, it seems like Jerry Krause was always looking for the next thing because he wasn't the guy that drafted Jordan. So he was always trying to find that next thing that he could bring in and say, listen, I did this to keep the transition going. And it was so evident that in that first meeting, they met up again for the gold medal and Kukoc played better. But in that first meeting against that team at the 92 Olympics, that Jordan and Pippen were just going to take it to Tony.
Well, and that's because they couldn't take it to Jerry Krause on the court. That's what they would have preferred to do, but that wasn't available to them. And I have great sympathy for Tony Kukoc, and you see this interview all those years later, you can see how wounded he still is about it. And he was right. They didn't even know him. They had never met him. They didn't know what kind of person he was, his background, from whence he came, and it was a terrible, the former Yugoslavia, what they were all going through there. Teammates for years on their national team then became mortal enemies overnight because you're either a Serb or Croatian, and all of those things, all of that is a backdrop. But I will say this, once Tony got to the Bulls and once he started playing with Scotty and Michael, they recognized his value, and it was a different tenor. But if you're a Kukoc, do you ever forget that's how you were treated the first time you met them? Crazy stuff.
Jackie, when this thing is all said and done, is there going to be anybody out there that will softer feel for Jerry Krause and say, oh, he wasn't as bad guy as we all thought he was going to be?
Well, it's the one thing I would say is it's a little bit of a shame, he's not here to defend himself. And I will say this also, I knew Jerry very well. He really did have a softer side to him. I used to say to Jerry, when all this was going on, I would say, you're one of the best executives in the game. Don't keep telling us. Let someone else say it for you. I think that would have solved a lot of his issues. He just was so hell-bent on making sure everybody knew that the organization and all the work he did, and you know how this is, the bbest praise is when it comes from someone else. If you start talking about yourself, how great you are, all that does is turn everybody off. He was never going to be one of the guys. He wasn't an athlete. He was an easy mark for both Michael and Scotty, and they had their reasons for disliking him, for wanting to break up something they had built so strongly. And to your point about always looking for the next thing, remember now, he plucked Phil Jackson out of the CBA and brought him aboard as an assistant, had him, alongside Tex Winter. And, he became convinced, well, if I hadn't discovered Phil Jackson, he'd never would have made it. Well, I don't believe that. I don't know if you guys do. I mean, come on, Phil Jackson was a pretty talented guy. Sooner or later, he was going to get it. He was going to get there.
Yeah. The other thing, I mean, like you saw the one in the post-game celebration. He never once mentioned the players. I mean, the organization.
I know. That was what a clip, right? What a clip.
Just at one point acknowledge the five guys on the floor and maybe you're good. There. No. So we'll see what happens and how that relationship evolves in the next couple of episodes. Jackie, always good to talk to you. We love your insight on this. Thanks for being with us this morning.
All right, guys. Have a wonderful day.
Thanks,
you too.
Jackie.
By the way, tune into The Last Dance, a behind-the-scenes look at the 90s Bulls dynasty. The series continues this Sunday at 9 Eastern on ESPN. And listen to the wrap-up podcast hosted by Jalen and Jacoby immediately following the broadcast, presented by State Farm and AT&T, available wherever you enjoy your podcasts. Coming up, the NFL is planning to start their season on time, and one team is already planning for how it might work. We'll get to that after this.
Currently, we're all living in a time of uncertainty, but one thing that has been made clear is that we need to come together to protect the things we care about, including the planet we all share. Allbirds make shoes from premium renewable materials, and they're on a mission to leave the planet in better shape than they found it. So that's why they'll be listing the carbon footprint on all shoes moving forward. With Allbirds, feel confident knowing you're wearing a shoe that's doing right by your feet and the planet. Find your pair at allbirds.com today.
Trade pros. Ferguson is committed to making business with us the easiest part of your day. Ferguson.com is designed to help run your business from the office to the job site by making your day-to-day activities easier with 24/7 account access, unmatched online inventory, and on-the-go account management. And with our Pro Plus customer loyalty program, you can earn points with every online purchase, redeemable for merchandise, event tickets, trips, and more. Sign up today at Ferguson.com.
Attention SSI recipients, if you did not file a tax return last year and have children under 17, you must act now to get the $500 economic impact payment per child. If you do not act by May 5th, you must wait until next year to get those payments. Go to irs.gov and enter your information in the non-filer tool by May 5th. That's irs.gov. This message produced by Social Security at U.S. taxpayer expense.
God, I love when you give tax information.
Makes you feel proud?
Wow.
All those years of school. Shout out Notre Dame.
So you're just blocking your dad out of that completely?
Yeah, more or less.
Okay. How you feel about that?
Whatever.
I'm here for the moderation. That's what I'm here for. Golic and Wingo with you, presented by Progressive Insurance. Okay, so the NFL schedule is coming out. Again, it'll be the entire schedule will be released either Wednesday or Thursday night. We'll have that special for you. I believe it's on ESPN that night. So we'll see what happens there. But the other thing that we need to be aware of is apparently they plan on starting on time, and they want to have a 17-game regular season. And an article just posted on ESPN.com. There's some concerns about whether the international games will go, but that is sort of a secondary issue because the Dolphins have already sort of put out a plan of what they're going to do. Tim Garfinkel, their one of their executive directors, was on Good Morning America. Tom Garfinkel, excuse me, the president and CEO of the Miami Dolphins and Hard Rock Stadium, was on Good Morning America. Basically, the Dolphins have laid out a plan already, should the season start on time or when the NFL season starts, about how they're going to deal with fans inside the stadium.
We would have times to come in for security at different gates, so people would be separated out in terms of when they enter the stadium. We would exit the stadium much like a church environment or something, where each row exits, and then so people aren't filing out all at the same time in a herd.
And just so you think, well, wow, doing that with the amount of people you normally see in a football game would be insane and would take so much time. Hard Rock Stadium has can hold probably like 65,000 fans. They're saying it could be down to 15,000 for next season as a result of the measures that would need to take place. So it would be markedly fewer bodies in there in an effort to space it. But like, this is something they've already done. So Hard Rock Stadium became the first public facility to earn the Global Biorisk Advisory Council STAR accreditation, the standard used for facilities to implement cleaning, disinfecting, and infectious disease prevention to work practices to control the risk associated with things like the coronavirus. So they have already, in this sense, gone above and beyond what the expectations, I think, just by the league would be.
Yeah, you look at the mock-up that they had. It had colored spots on the ground leading up to entrance gates to designate the distance needed between the fans. We see that now when you go to do your pickup orders at restaurants and stuff.
Or in grocery
stores.
Yeah.
That they're showing you what 6 feet is like. Well, which brings, a myriad of questions. Probably won't be any tailgating, I would imagine. Yeah. And then if there's 15,000, what 15,000 get in? Yeah. I bet they more than 15,000 season ticket holders. So who gets to go in? Who doesn't get to go in?
Is it going to lottery at some point?
I would imagine there's going to be something like that to figure out. But it has to start somewhere. And you have massive amounts of people that need to get to a place, get in a place, and get out of a place. And they have kind of gone through that process of how they would go about doing it.
And the other thing they talked about exiting, they said it would be very much like a church service where one pew goes out and one pew's fall. So, look, they have plans in place. And I think that's what you want to see because the NFL has been dead set on this idea of going forward with the season at a regular time. And if that's going to be the place, every team needs to have these sort of parameters put together.
The one thing is going to be the one thing where we see, especially in some other countries, of people that have either gone back to work or are going out, we see the quick temperature thing. Yeah. Is that viable with 15,000 people?
I think it might have to be, right?
Yeah, I mean, that's part of it right now. For how long it lasts, I have no idea. But will that be the beginning part of it? And as we've talked about with Joey Logano and NASCAR going ahead, they're not testing their drivers or crew because they don't want to take tests away from other people. So would that be the same here? Now the season doesn't start till September. Maybe at that point there are enough tests, but are you're not testing people as they walk in, are you? I mean, because even if it takes 5 minutes for a result, I mean, that would be very difficult to do.
It would be. That being said, football's in an interesting spot because unlike a lot of the other sports that we talk about, specifically basketball and baseball, where you play so many games, football, if you are in a particular city, you've got one game a week that you're worrying about with that. So if you do have to take what might feel like extraordinary means at the time for the people involved, and you're dealing with limited people inside the stadium now, I think football's at least in a position where, all right, you can spend the time logistically to plan for that all week and say, this is what we've got to execute on game day. We only have one crack at it, so we need to get it done then.
And they can, you're talking about what, 65,000 and 15,000. You're talking about a quarter of the fans, so you definitely have more room for the parking and where they all would go into the stadium and such.
Yes. I just think the testing, like the temperature you're talking about, I think that's going to be the new normal in a lot of places.
Yeah, I think
like eventually at airports, I think, much like after 9/11, take your shoes off and go through screening. I think that's going to be part of the new formal going forward. So we got that talking about in the NFL. We also had Marcus Spears join us earlier talking about the signing of Andy Dalton. And if you missed our interview with Marcus, of course, you can check out the entire interview on demand in the Golic and Wingo podcast, brought to you by Capital One. Why settle for average? With Capital One, you can open a savings account with a rate 5 times the national average. Welcome to banking reimagined. What's in your wallet? Capital One, N.A., member FDIC. To your point, though, it's interesting, right? Because it's only, like Herm Edwards always says, football is the only sport where you practice way more than you play.
Yeah.
And it's the idea that if you have an entire week to get ready for one game, they do have the leeway or the runway, for lack of a better term, to find a way to make this. It may take a little longer, but to find a way to get people through this.
And I think that's kind of the inverse of the point that we've heard made for college football so much, which is if it's not safe for fans, how are we going to put the players out there? Yeah. I'm sure the NFL is looking at that and saying, all right, well, if we can get it to a point where it's safe enough for the players to be there, then we've got to start planning for a way to make it safe enough for our fans to be involved in this process.
Yeah. No, that makes sense. And if it starts out by only being 10, 15, 20,000 people there, maybe that's the way. Then, like I said, good luck figuring out which 15 or 20,000 make it.
I'm assuming they're saying, you know what, that problem is a lot better than the nothing we were talking about. I agree. So they're trying to salvage anything they can.
It's, again, one of those things we've seen a lot over the last couple of weeks, something that may seem positive going forward, and that's what we're looking for here. Coming up next, a former AL Cy Young winner was once again shutting down the league. We'll explain next. Golic and Wingo, ESPN Radio, ESPN2.